Hey, I'm sharing this video because I want to really be able to basically warn people in when future events happen. And I want to just give you some background here. It was about 6 years ago where God started revealing to me that future attacks in this country. He started revealing to me that we're going to be that he basically told me a few hours before there would be terrorist attacks, like basically that people would be there would be gunmen and they would go and shoot places up. And at one time I even told my daughter, I said there's about to be an attack, and and I really don't know who to tell this to. Who am I going to tell if there's going to be a large terrorist attack in this country? And so so in the future, I shared earlier videos that I would post those if I knew, because I would know 3 or 4 hours in advance. He would tell me, and then I could post them on my YouTube channel and before it happened. And but in this case, when I was at one point, this is back in November of 2021, back in November 21st of 2021, there was a guy that rammed through a bunch of people in a crowd in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And that was on November 21st. And I think he killed 6 people, injured like 65 people. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because the next day, November 22nd, at the time I was living in Kennesaw, Georgia, and I was riding, I think I don't remember what kind, I had a few bikes at the time, but I was riding from Kennesaw, Georgia to Marietta, and I was, on the side of the road. I was on the shoulder. It's a pretty busy road. It's a big hill at one point too. But anyways, I was on the side of the road, riding on the side of the road, and the same color SUV the day before that had killed somebody, there was another person that, as I was driving, they played bumper cars with the side of their vehicle. So they basically hit me from the, just swerved off the road onto the shoulder and knocked me flying off my bike. And, I bounced off the shoulder and went into the ditch. And, I didn't know if I broke anything. The first thing is you kind of check yourself to see what you broke. And the 3 cars that were behind him stopped. Nobody went to go get the guy. Nobody went to go get his license plate, or sped up to get his license plate. But they all stopped because they thought something bad happened to me. They saw what happened. And so luckily I didn't have to go to the hospital, but I was, I had a pretty good, I had some blood coming out of me pretty good. And, but anyways, I say all this because going back, I had explained to you guys that I was in prison for 3 months for January 6th and for being at the Capitol. But during that time, I was kind of praying that, God started giving me revelations back in 2019. And I thought that, at that time I wasn't, when God first started showing me things, I wasn't, I was far from God, and I was kind of doing things that really were outside the will of God. So I thought, God, are you telling me that this stuff is happening because I'm doing things outside the will of God, or what? So I started praying back when this was back in, about 4 or 5 months ago, that God revealed to me that I prayed that God, you revealed to me if, I didn't think that I needed to. I explained to you guys before about, familiar spirits and situations and stuff. So I said, I don't want to go outside of your will. Like, I felt like it's kind of strange. Like, am I doing, the only way I could figure out if God is telling me about these attacks is if I go outside the will of God, which didn't seem right, And so anyways, I know it might be a little confusing, but I was, so at that time, so I prayed, I said, God, please show me that, I don't have to do anything outside your will for you to tell me if there's going to be attacks. And so anyways, so I had prayed that prayer, and I was, I think we had lockdown even, and when I was in prison, it was pretty like a difficult time. And so I spoke to my roommate, and I started talking to him about, there's going to be terrorist attacks. And I had mentioned some things, and God, so what I understood from that time now is that God, even back then I understood that God was showing me that there was going to be an attack, but he showed it in a different way, where I didn't recognize it right away because it was something he was showing it in a different way. And so, so within 3 days is when that terrorist attack happened, where that guy in New Orleans ran down a bunch of people in New Orleans and killed a bunch of people and injured people. And then within, I think, a day or two, that same a guy that was also another former soldier, I think it was in Afghanistan, had blown the top off a Tesla trying to kill people, but all it did was blow the top off the Tesla. Luckily, it didn't injure anybody. And I don't remember God telling me about that one, but he did explain. He showed it to me in a different way when it came down to the New Orleans attack. So I had, and my bunkmate can verify this because I was talking to him about it at the time, and then I was basically, I realized right after the fact when it happened, I was just talking to him about there's going to be a terrorist attack, and I had mentioned, we were talking about New Orleans, and I was like, oh my God, like God actually was telling me where the attack was going to be. And then my bunkmate realized that I knew ahead of time, that God was telling me ahead of time that the attack was going to happen. So he could actually verify the story. But I just want to share that because in future videos, I will definitely, God had revealed to me there's going to be attacks with people with assault rifles and weapons and, guns in any case, and had shown me in prophetic dreams. But as well, I'm going to, anytime that God gives me, and this was, so he had told me 3 or 4 days in advance of the New Orleans attack. And so in future videos, I will post them. And, if I get noticed, I'll post them as soon as it's revealed to me that these attacks are going to happen. But I want to just tell you, so that way ahead of time, that you understand that that's what I plan on doing. So that I'm not saying this after the fact, so, you can kind of, that, people will say, well, you're telling us after the fact. Well, in future, I will tell you, if God reveals it to me, I will tell you beforehand so that you'll know. So anyways, hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.